Okay, so like I said, we're going to do a review, and I hope for it to be a joint effort. We're not going to do from any notes, just from some of the studies that I've been going and things that are helping me put together pieces. Um, but I know I've been reviewing, I've been reviewing Acts 27, but I'm also working on some classes from the France School of the Prophets in 2019. If anybody saw them, I know somebody also posted them on the Bible study forum, if anybody saw that as well. So those are the ones that, from the ones that I'm pulling from as well. Um, kind of, some of us all wound up in the same place for some reason or other. But as I was saying earlier, for those that weren't here, and part of Jackie's prayer as well, that we have all these pieces. And tonight I hope to be able to share, some of the pieces that all fill in on particular places on the line that show us where we're at, how we got here, to remember the way in which God led us in the past to where we're at today, to maybe help us. So I find for myself, the best thing I can do is review some of the old studies. That helps me with some of the challenges that we face today. So hopefully it's helpful to everybody. So I do have Acts 27 on the other side of the board. We may flip back and forth to it. Not real sure right now. But I want to point out, I mean, you can see over here, right? You can see this. If it's blurry, I'll have to take a picture again of it tonight and send it off because I think I have it as close as I can go to you. Um, does that help? Is it less blurry? I think you can see it a little bit better now, right?
Yeah. Are you going
Okay.
to show us anything under your arm there on the left?
Probably, yeah, we will.
Okay.
I just wanted to start with this little list right here. Um, and there's more to it, and I thought maybe actually because we put Acts 27 here, which should be first. So if anybody can think of anything else here as part of these lines, we'll add to it. But we know that we started with Acts 27. She went into the two ships, um, Alexandria and Adramyttium. She went into Pyrrhus, and I think Ipsus is the history before. No, Pyrrhus is involved in Ipsus as well. So the Battle of Ipsus, the study of the revolutions, and then also World War I and World War II. And when you take World War I plus World War II, it equals World War III. Okay, so going back to just some basics of to begin with, and hopefully, I pray I do this well. And if you have questions, stop me in case I may not have enough detail, but in case there's something that you don't follow, then do let me know. We're going to start up here with the issues of the king of the north and the king of the south. Daniel 11, verse 40, part B, has tells us about the battles between the king of the north and the king of the south. We know that that's marking 1989, the time of the end for this reform line, omega, the omega of modern Israel. Hope I said that right. Modern Adventism, modern Israel. Okay, so from the story of Pyrrhus, I hope I have that right. No, Panium comes from, who remembers where Panium comes from?
The
Anybody remember?
Di the Diadochi Wars? Or is it before that?
Before. I don't think it's Diadochi as well. Goes back further. In Daniel, did anybody remember where in Daniel 11? Okay, I may not have my verse perfect either, but Panium came from Daniel 11, I think verse 14 or 15, somewhere in there. Sound familiar? And we'll put 13 or 14. I don't remember for sure, but that's roughly where it's at. What precedes Panium?
Raphia.
Raphia. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, you're right. It's Daniel 11 through 14.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. So you had Raphia and then you had Panium. And
Hmm.
Panium marks where on our line? What actual year does Panium mark on our line?
2021.
2021. Okay. So we know when we look at this little section here is from the ship of Adramyttium, that we're going to look at. We've been looking at it we have it on the other side of the board, the full line. But this is just looking at the ship of Adramyttium, this section between 2021 and Sunday Law. And you had it's marked as Panium or 2021, or on the ship of Adramyttium, it's marked as Cyprus. Sunday Law is Myra. I think it says Myra, a city of Lycia. Maybe somebody remembers how that says it. And then it's in this history where she writes on the ship of Adramyttium that she shows that this is the Sea of Cilicia and Pamphylia. Sound familiar?
Hmm.
What does Cilicia mean?
Oh, I wrote that down.
Anybody remember? Cilicia? Oh, to overturn, right?
Yes.
Okay, and Pamphylia?
Uh, from every nation and tribe.
Yeah, nation from every nation from every tribe.
Yeah.
We'll just shorten it. Every tribe. Okay, so there's an overturning in this history. Overturning, and it's a nation of every tribe. We know from Adramyttium that she marked that beginning at 1989 as the United States and the SDA Church. From Felix to Festus, you had Reagan to Bush, representing the institutions of the United States and the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And they chose to abide in death. Okay, so we're going to bypass that early history and just look at Panium to Sunday Law, where you see this overturning, and it's the transition. This is a transition from the Sixth Kingdom, because the Sixth Kingdom goes all the way back to 1798, begins when Alexandria began. 1798 is the Sixth Kingdom, and now in this dispensation that we just went through, you have the transition that's taking place from the Sixth Kingdom to the Seventh Kingdom. So you have the falling of the Sixth Kingdom and the rising of the Sixth Kingdom. And it's at this place where the United States speaks like a dragon. Okay, so now we're going to look at some of the other things that she went into were, I don't have this one on the board, but we can reference it using this marker. The Daniel 11:40, I hope I say this right. You see hope I say this right, 1798, you see the deadly wound on the papacy and then the death. And so she did compare and contrast in verse 40 to show that if the king of the north had a deadly wound and then a death, then the king of the south would have a deadly wound and a death. So in 1989, you see the king of the south receiving a deadly wound and then a death. And then king of the south was a death. Everybody's following so far, right? This is pretty basic. Everybody's following, okay?
Yeah, but it wouldn't hurt to slow down just a little
Slow down. I'll
bit.
try. I'll try. Okay. Do I need to review anything or no? I am recording it as well. So
Oh, perfect. Okay, and the topic of what we're reviewing tonight is
kind of an overview of many things. Hope that helps. Sorry. It's kind of an overview
okay,
of basically we're going to look at these different aspects through our history on our line,
how they tie together.
if that helps. Yeah, how they where each one fits.
Okay.
Not in great detail. Maybe we'll add detail as we continue through, or somebody else can continue through with some of these studies to add detail as we go through. So we're only looking at Panium to Sunday Law when it comes to the ship of Adramyttium. I will bide in death. So we're looking from Panium, which is 2021, on the line of Acts 27 with Adramyttium at Cyprus. Cyprus to Myra, and Myra is where you have also, you mark bitter. I think it's bitterness and harvest at Myra. So you see the overturning of the sixth kingdom and the rising of the seventh kingdom. The seventh kingdom, I don't think, oh yeah, I did. I wrote it over here. Oh, just put it over here. The seventh kingdom is the United States over the UN. So when we look at the UN and the purpose of the UN, she goes into quite a bit of that, and we're not going to go into the detail of it in this study. But when you look at the UN and the purpose of the UN, Christine, you're studying the UN and you're getting ready to do a study. Why was the UN created?
The UN was created to create a unity through every single nation in the world to prevent war. So they have to work together to pass anything to prevent war. But you can see that over the time, it's kind of slipped, and nations have decided that they're above it
Yeah,
and
thank
causing
you.
problems.
So during World War One, Germany was rising and getting powerful, and you had, then it goes into World War One, and what was the result? What was begun, established as a result of World War One? Do you remember?
That was the League of Nations
The League of Nations, and it failed,
because it didn't have any power.
didn't have any power. So then after World War Two, you have the rise of Germany again in a dictatorship. And so, as you said, the United Nations is a redo, and it was to prevent
War and to facilitate peace and equality and
human
yeah,
rights.
human rights. Mhm.
Yeah, to prevent any one nation to rise into a dictator. So to have um, all the nations, I'll give a couple of examples that Elder Tess gives in this. This is what I'm kind of going through summarizing is France School of the Prophets 2019, number 7, from a lamb to a dragon. And there's a couple of studies after that pieces of it might be incorporated into. But when it comes to the UN, you had all these different nations, as Christine said. And if one nation wanted to go and attack another nation with the purpose of the UN was they would have to go to the UN, and I don't know if it's right to say get permission, but you'd have to go through the UN and all the other nations would have to say yay or nay. Because if you did it without the support of the UN, then you're going to have all those nations against you. So it prevents war because no one wants to go out without the support of the UN and then have the gang of
Or
nations after them.
UN.
So it was a preventative tool is my poor summary of how I understand that. It was to prevent, as you said, war, to deter people from and prevent them from building into and becoming a dictator. Is that fair summary?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So so this is where we end up, whereas now the UN, as you stated, when it came to equality and human rights, how do we get to where we're not going to answer this question? I'm just going to throw it out there that it's something that to think about. How does the UN get to the place to where that the United States is the boss? So we'll kind of leave it at that there. So then back down to 1989 to 91, we knew that Daniel 11:40 Part B, you would see a death and a deadly wound of the King of the South, because 1798 you had the death and deadly wound of the papacy, and you would have the death or the deadly wound and the death of the King of the South here. So 1989 you have a deadly wound of the King of the South, that is the USSR, that receives the deadly wound, and then we see it progressively fall to, in 1991 it receives it dies. It dies. But we also know that if the papacy resurrects, what does that mean about the King of the South?
But it's not dead.
That it would resurrect.
It resurrects, yeah.
It would resurrect.
But
So
this time is it going to resurrect this time?
the King of the South, we're looking at 1989.
Oh,
We're not
okay.
looking here. We're looking at 1989. So 1989, you see the Soviet Union receives a deadly wound and then a death. So in this history, I don't remember if it was in 1989, but Gorbachev is actually the one who first states that he can foresee this new world order. Why? Because prior to 1989, you had the Cold War and the two superpowers, the King of the South, Soviet Union, and the United States. You had the two superpowers, and 1989 comes, and you see the deadly wound on the King of the South, the USSR, and Gorbachev makes a statement that he foresees the coming of a new world order. What does he mean by that? What is he seeing happening?
Well, he wants a multi-layer, or not multinational, not unilateral, but multilateral.
Bilateral.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, bilateral. And so it's bilateral with the United Nations. What does that make it? You have and then you have uni, multilateral, unilateral, multi, sorry. I had my words totally confused. Multilateral. And then you have unilateral. Okay. So you see this bilateral world geopolitically. The Soviet Union receives its deadly wound and it's pushed back all the way to just Russia and leading to its becoming its death. Okay, so we knew that if the King of the North, the papacy, 1798, is going to be resurrected, then the King of the South would also be resurrected. So while it receives its deadly wound and death, it resurrects. And I put down here some dates on Putin. 1999 to 2000, Putin was prime minister. I think it was Yeltsin that gave that power over to him. And along with those classes, the Brazil School of the Prophets, I believe she goes through all this with Putin, and all the different leaders, Lenin all the way to Stalin and all the way to Putin. So 1999 to 2000, Yeltsin hands over power and makes Putin prime minister. From 2000 to 2008, he's president. And I believe at that time, constitutionally, you had term limits. He steps out, becomes prime minister. What's his name? Anybody remember drawing a blank at his name, but his friend, he has him. He winds up being president. I know the name, and it's not escaping my mind right now. So, huh?
Me too. Like, it's right on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah. So anyway, so he,
Is that Yeltsin? Not Yeltsin.
no, not Yeltsin.
The other
Not
one.
Yeltsin. Huh?
The other one.
Yeah,
Was
The
it,
other one.
was it Medvedev?
Medvedev, that's the one.
That's
Medvedev.
the
Thank
one.
you. It's nice having a group of minds here because somebody's going to remember something. So yeah, Medvedev is president, and Putin kind of orchestrates this so that he's prime minister, but basically Medvedev's kind of his puppet. So Putin behind the scenes is still ruling, and then he comes back. I think he had limited consecutive terms that you could run. So then from 2012 onward, he's president. I think it's in this history here where he changed things to where he could continue on. Because if I remember right, in this history, you could only have, if it's 2 terms, 4 years. I don't remember how it's set, but I know that there was term limits, and he had to, but it wasn't like the United States. You could come back. So in the United States, it's 2 terms only. But if I remember right, in Russia, it's 2 terms or whatever it was, and then you could be out for a period and then come back. Anyways, but then he changed the term limits, I believe, down in this history here. So he's president from 2012 all the way on. So you see this with the resurrection, this being the resurrection of the King of the South. Is that all, everybody okay, up to date? I mean, up to speed with all that so far?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. Anybody have any questions as we continue to roll through? Okay. So, we'll look a little bit at here, and I'm going to pull hopefully some of this from memory. Where do we first see Donald Trump on the line? Anybody remember?
1989.
1989. And what do we see at 1989?
Wasn't he like on Time magazine and they did some sort of interview or something like that? Is that right?
Yes. Yes, he was on the cover January 1989, I believe it was, January 1989. He's on the cover. And I don't remember, maybe somebody else does, because I don't want to, I might mix some things up. If this is where he makes the statement, or if it's future where he makes the statement. But you have the World Wide Web coming up. I think I think that statement was more along in his future, in his time here. I don't remember that he looks back and says that. I don't remember, or he says it back here. But you have the World Wide Web rising up, and if anybody remembers pieces of that, I'm trying to pull it together in my mind to be able to say it. But he comments on the World Wide Web rising up and mentions that it's a new world order. He also mentions something about a new world order, or connects it, I believe, connected it as a new world order. You had also, anybody remember when, okay, so I said Gorbachev is the one that first said New World Order. He foresaw it coming. Did anybody remember who said it next and when?
Repeat that question. New World Order.
Gorbachev is the one that we know of making the first statement about a new world order, because he foresees this. He sees this battle happening, and he sees what's happening to the Soviet Union, and this new world order he's referencing is that there's only going to be one superpower instead of two. Who else said it, and do you remember when?
I thought Reagan mentioned, but I'm pretty sure Bush did. Yeah.
Bush.
Glorious. Yeah, Bush was talking about a new world order.
And when was it? September?
Yeah, Troy and Gloria put Troy put 1991 and Gloria put November 9th, 1990.
It is 1990.
Is
And Troy was either a typo or got it wrong. Either way, but it's a whole lot of information. But so Bush says it, and this is
on September 11th.
huh?
On September 11th, 1990.
Yes, and I've been thinking about that with, if anybody remembers in the Portugal classes, there were several studies where they were looking up other other histories that involve September 11th. And I don't remember those histories, and I haven't gone back to those classes to review them, but they were back in the times of the Ottoman Empire and involved various things in that history. There's two of them, I believe, that I'm recalling. But the question was asked, why did bin Laden choose 9/11 in 2001? Why was that chosen? That question was never answered in the Portugal classes, but I'm going to share a thought that as I've been doing this review, this is going to be a whole lot of information if you want to take notes.
You said you're recording, right?
I am recording it. And
Okay.
we've done some of the studies on the east wind. We'll just refer to this as the east wind. We've done some of those studies on the east wind before that showed 1979. I'm going to put this back just a little bit. 1979 to 1989, there were multiple things that have been marked. Who remembers and wants to give us some of the things that were marked? 1979 to 1989, that 10-year period before the time of the end.
That was Afghanistan war?
Afghanistan? What was the Afghanistan war? What happened there? Who and who?
Wasn't that the United States and was it?
Wasn't the United States, although they helped.
Well, I mean, as in, yeah, proxy wars. But well, it would have been Afghanistan. Shoot, I forget. It's like right there on the edge. Anybody?
Yeah, that Russia invades Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Russia invaded-
79. You said
Yes.
79?
79. Afghanistan. Russia invades Afghanistan. Okay. You also have in 1979, what's happening in Iran? (1979), not the 10 years, but 1979, what's happening? If I missed the chat, shout it out. Anybody remember 1979 in Iran?
The Iranian Revolution.
Iranian Revolution. Oh, no. Yes, sorry. Yes, thank you. So the Shah of Iran, I hope I spelled that right, is overthrown.
Mm-hmm.
Khomeini.
And Khomeini
Takes
rises.
over.
I don't know how to spell that. So we're just going to pretend I spelled it. Okay.
So that
Okay.
thing with Khomeini happened in 79?
79, yeah. So then you have the Iranian Revolution. Okay. So you have the monarchy, which is also, what was Iran in the past?
Iran in the past.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody knows. Somebody probably knows, but I don't know if I'm asking the question right.
Religiously, economically.
Land, territory, who was there before? Who is Iran?
That's not Babylon, is it?
No.
I need a map.
Shah of Iran was the last monarchy of Persia.
Persia.
Okay, so it was Persia. So you have the Iranian Revolution. The Shah of Iran is overthrown. The Shah of Iran was allies, friends with the United States. And now you've gone to a church state with the church over the state. The Ayatollah Khomeini now ruling. And Iran is what do you call it? Religion? Faith? What sect are they mostly? Iran?
Are they Sunni?
No.
Is that what you? No,
Shia.
Shia.
it's the other one. I always mix them up.
Yeah. And so who's the other one? Who's the other one? Who is Sunni?
Jackie says Sunni.
Yeah.
He's
Who,
Sunni versus Shia.
and who is mostly Sunni in this what we're looking at in this history here?
Iraq or Saudi
Iraq.
Arabia? Yeah.
Iraq, yeah. So you have the Iranian Revolution. Iran is now going to be church run over the state. Goes into very strict Shia law, Sharia law, sorry. And Iraq, where you have the rising of Saddam Hussein, where they're mostly Sunni. My memory may be fading, but I recall it being they're seeing it as a threat to Iraq with the Shias ruling as they are, which then sparks, if I have that correctly, but what is correct is then you have the Iran-Iraq war. So you have the Russia invades Afghanistan. You also see so you have the Afghan war. You also see the United States and Saudi Arabia backing Russia. I'm sorry, backing Afghanistan. Who else gets involved in that history to help fight against Russia? Support of Afghanistan. Anybody remember the
Not Syria. It's not Syria.
No. The Mujahideen, right?
Mm.
Is that who is that? Are they the Mujahideen back here? I know it's Bin Laden. Bin Laden goes there. There's a bunch of this history I'm not going to remember, but we're not going to go through. I just want to look at this history right here for now. So you have Bin Laden that is also comes involved here. Okay, so you're following so far? 79 to 89. Russia invades Afghanistan. The Shah of Iran is overthrown in 1979. You now have the Iranian Revolution, the Iran-Iraq War, Iranian Revolution, and then leading up to 1989. We also see the moral majority, which I'm not going to. Yes, Troy, it was Bin Laden. The moral majority is marked in this history, but I particularly want to focus on what's going on in the Middle East, just for this little section to get us through here. So you've got this issue going on in the Middle East. Okay, so back up to here, 1989 to 91, you've got the World Wide Web being designed. It's released in 1991. Gorbachev sees the handwriting on the wall and makes a statement about a new world order. George Bush Sr. in 1990 is declaring this new world order, and the new world order represents a unilateral power. The road to a unilateral power, I'll just put it that way. This path to a one world order, or there's one superpower. Okay, so this is September 11th, 1990. And what kind of then goes through my mind with all this issue of the Middle East, and we know the involvement of the east wind is, do you think it has anything oh wait, we got to put one other thing here in place, which I don't think came into my mind and escapes me really, really fast. So you have Bin Laden when you come into this history. Works with the United States and Saudi Arabia in Afghanistan. But then you have the Kuwait War. When was the Kuwait War? Anybody remember? George Bush invades Iraq, invades Kuwait. Then you had Desert Storm. Was that 1991, wasn't it?
You mean the Desert Storm?
Yes, 1991. Is that correct?
On August 2nd, 1990,
1990?
Iraq governed by invaded neighboring Kuwait. Okay, wait, but it doesn't say. I'm not sure when the U.S. came into it. Is that what you're asking? When the U.S. came to it?
Yes. if you don't have it, whenever Desert Storm was. So Iraq invades Kuwait, decides to go try to, I think they were doing slant drilling as well. And they wind up, Iraq goes into Kuwait, and the United States, or Desert Storm, George Bush, takes the United States in to take out Iraq. Iraq builds and builds and builds more powerful when it comes to the whole region of the Middle East and oil. Okay, so was it 1990? Desert Storm?
Oh.
Is that what we all? There we go. The Gulf War, yes. Okay. So August 1990 to February 1991. Okay. So you've got the United States invading, the United States going after Iraq for invading Kuwait, because Kuwait is an ally or friend of the United States. So when the United States, I hope I say this one right, goes to Kuwait, what is bin Laden doing? Hope I got this one right. What is bin Laden doing? Iraq invades Kuwait. What does bin Laden do? Anybody remember? Bin Laden, where is he from? Anybody remember?
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia. Bin Laden is from Saudi Arabia. We'll just kind of extend this out a little bit. And we've got Gulf War. Okay, so bin Laden goes to the Saudi government and wants to take the Mujahideen, who helped defeat the Russians, helped Afghanistan defeat the Russians. He wants to take his army, the Mujahideen, to go help Kuwait. And what does the Saudi government say? Anybody remember? Who did the Saudi government choose to help them to go save Kuwait? America was already helping. Yeah. So bin Laden offers to go, but Saudi Arabia chooses the United States to help as well instead. How does bin Laden feel about that?
Not happy.
Not happy. He doesn't want the United States on their soil. So bin Laden is angry. He's got the Mujahideen. And when you progress a little bit forward, which we won't put it on the line, these are things that we reviewed a long time ago. It's 1996 and 98, I believe. I don't think it's 94. It was a 2-year spread. I think it's 96 and 98. Twice that bin Laden declared war on the United States. I'm sure there's a lot more that's escaping my memory that builds up to it. But he does have this anger with the United States being in the Middle East. So keep that in mind, because what we're trying to juggle, like they say, a lot of things in our head at once. And I know I hope I'm not giving too much and trying to summarize things that have been given to us in all these different pieces, and hopefully it makes sense, because you've got the King of the North, the King of the South. You see that here, the King of the North and the King of the South, and you see the handwriting on the wall that it's going to be just the King of the North, and you're declaring a new world order because it's going to be a one world order. But also in this prior history, you've got the issues that are going on in the Middle East. A lot of wars going on in the Middle East. United States gets involved when they go to help Kuwait. And Kuwait happens because, I think I already mentioned this, I don't know if I connected it when I said it, but Saddam Hussein gains a lot of power when it comes to oil. So he's getting built up, lifted up, what have you. Emboldened, I think is the word, I'm not sure. Emboldened. And it goes and invades Kuwait. So then you have bin Laden wanting to take the Mujahideen to go help Kuwait, but the Saudi government instead goes with the United States. Bin Laden is angry because the United States has no place being in the Middle East. And keep in mind, you've got this New World Order just have been announced. When did, we already talked about it, but just to review, when did George Bush announce the New World Order? The date, we just make sure we're all following. What date?
September 11, 1990.
September 11th, 1990. So the United States declares this New World Order here. You've got bin Laden angered because the United States is helping Kuwait instead of Saudi Arabia helping Kuwait. So the US is on their soil and he's angry. 1990, 96, and I believe it's 98, bin Laden declares war on the US. Okay, so bin Laden declares war on the United States. What happens next? On this little review. This is the east wind section of all this. It's all these entities happening, all these things are happening with the different players in prophecy at the same time. 9/11 happens. Yeah. And so I don't know if that's why Al Qaeda chose 9/11, but it kind of looks like a possibility. I don't know if it was ever said that way in Portugal, and I don't know if I'm wrong, but it kind of looks like it's a possibility as to why he chose 9/11. It could have to do with previous histories with the Ottoman Empire. Could very well have to do with previous battles in the history of the Ottoman Empire. Okay, so let me just because I'm probably take some of this off eventually. So let me just get a quick picture. So I tend to forget that, and I just want to get that Iranian part on there. Sure do need kids around when you got to take pictures fast. Okay, so in case we erase that, we'll have that. So does everybody have that in your mind? You have the King of the South and the King of the North, pre-1989. You have a deadly wound and a death of the King of the South. Now you have a new world order being declared by the King of the North. You have all these different revolutions that have taken place in the Middle East. You've got the raising up of bin Laden and the Mujahideen who go help in Afghanistan and defeat the Russians. And that's a whole nother story too. There's a lot of history there that led up to this invasion here and what they were trying to do. So then you have Saddam Hussein rising up and being emboldened to where he goes and now invades Kuwait. The United States goes to help Kuwait because they're allies. Bin Laden is upset because bin Laden wanted to keep the United States off their soil and rather take the Mujahideen in to go help Kuwait. But the Saudi government says, no, we want the United States to help us out. So then you have 1996 and 98. If anybody wants to verify those dates, that'd be great, but I'm pretty sure those are right. But bin Laden declares war on the United States. Then you have coming up to 2001, 9/11. Okay, everybody up to speed or keeping up? Is everybody keeping up okay? Or any questions? No. All okay? So you've got the issue of the King of the North and the King of the South, and the issue of what's going on with the east wind. Okay. I think we covered this part with, with the World Wide Web. Donald Trump being marked at 1989. Donald Trump is marked again as another possible attempt at running for president. Does anybody remember when? 2000. Yeah, 2000. So 1989 and 2000. I know there were others along the way, but we're going to kind of fast forward and go to this line here, I believe. But this one will give us revolutions or civil war. Yeah, stop that. Okay. This one will give us revolutions or civil war and the midway point. Anybody remember how you initially got the midway point? Where did that initially come from? Something's wrong with Sheila. Yeah, stop that. Anybody remember how Elder Tess got the midway point to begin with? Millerite history. Yes, Millerite history. Midway was, do you remember where Midway was, Gloria? If you want to shout it out, you can.
July 21st.
Midway was July 21st. And it's on the other end.
April 19 and October.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's a great controversy, but I know she talks about it was midway between when they first thought Jesus was coming and October 22nd. Midway between was July 21. So that gave us midway from the Millerite history. And from the Millerite history and this midpoint, she was able to trace back through revolutions. Also marked were numbers from the 2520 as well. 220 is restoration, correct? Is that correct? 220 is restoration. 151 comes from the 2520. Okay, so she took this this pattern here. What's another way to say this pattern? Anybody remember?
3, 4.
Go ahead. Go ahead. What was that?
I think it was Francisco.
Oh, I got my mic on. Sorry.
Oh, you were thinking out loud and not speaking to us. Okay.
Yeah, speaking out
So,
loud.
so she had looking at this with Boston. Anybody remember that?
Boston Concord Exeter test.
And test. Okay. And this being the midway point. So coming out of Millerite history, you have a Boston, Concord, Exeter, and a test. Okay. So going back up to now to our line, marking 9/11. We know that 9/11 is marked in our history, is marked as August 11th, 1840. We're not going to use that one here, but it is marked with both April 19 and August 11, 1840. And I don't remember the circumstances.
Elaine, just correction there. I think Concord is August 1st. It's not July 21st. There.
You think what? What'd you say?
You put Boston Concord as July 21st, but Concord was August 1st. So you may not be able to use that. There. The repeating pattern.
Yeah. Say that again. I'm sorry. I'm thinking.
So Boston is April, but Concord was not July 21st. It was August 1st.
Oh, okay. So maybe those. Okay.
Boston was July 21st. Yeah.
Okay, we'll leave those off for now. I'm probably mixing things up. Thank you. Okay. So another part of the whole pattern. Thank you for doing that for me, because we're not going to use that anyways on this part here. My bad. Told you we might mix something. I might mix some things up. Okay, so taking this pattern here up to our line, marking 9/11 as April 19. And you know the close of probation on the line of the priest was 2019, which we'll get into how we got there. That the midpoint of July 21 or midnight was 2014. And that 2014 date, can be traced back using the 151 from the 2520, using the 220, and we'll mark which ones these are. And I believe also the 490 takes you back to Reformation. Is that correct? Anybody remember that? There were others, but these are the two main ones that she had on the line at the time. So where do they take us back to? The 220 takes you back to the French Revolution and the midpoint of the French Revolution, 1789 to 1799, and the midpoint being 1794. So midpoint, 2014 became the representative of the midpoint, because when you look back here again, taking the 2520 and the 151 years, it takes you to 1863, which is the midpoint of the Civil War. 1861 to 1865, 1863 being the midpoint. So those are just two of them. There were others, I believe, if I remember correctly. So you have the French Revolution and the Civil War. 9/11 on this particular history that we're looking at is where you have George Bush. This would be George Bush Jr. And George Bush Jr., when you look back, trace the Persian kings, the last 7 Persian kings. I'm not going to go into that because I don't have those details fresh in my mind. Plus, we're already covering a whole lot to begin with. But he lined up with false Smyrtus. Why does he line up with false Smyrtus? Who was false Smyrtus, and what does that mean to George Bush? For George Bush to be false Smyrtus? What happened in that election? Illegitimate president. Anybody remember that? 2000.
Gore got the popular vote, but they had a discrepancy in Florida with the whole hanging chads, and the electoral vote ended up giving it to Gore. Or did it go all the way to the SCOTUS? I can't remember now.
I think it went all the way to Supreme Court. Yeah. Is that what you're saying? And it was given to George Bush when it should have been Al Gore. Al Gore should have been the president. So
there was a lot of voter suppression in Florida, and it was actually the first time that the Republican Party exhibited this very aggressive stance on it. They were very aggressive. I mean, they left out before in Florida, because George Bush's brother was governor. Yeah.
He played a pivotal role, from my understanding.
Yeah, he did. He tried to be governor in '96, I think it was, and he didn't win. And it was because he didn't get the black vote. So then he came back again, I guess 4 years later, and he won. But he made some very racist comments. And the black, people in Florida, they started protesting him. And so he did not have a good relationship with black voters, basically. And so when his brother now in 2000 is up for, president, this was like a turning point for the Republican Party. it really, they wanted, Ronald Reagan didn't do what the conservative part of the Republican Party wanted to do. He was just, he was okay, but he didn't do what, he wasn't strong enough. They thought he was going to be really forceful and, change the government because, they want to do, that's why we've come to here. I mean, it's taken 24 years. So he suppressed a lot of Black votes. He suppressed the prisoners, people who were in prison, did their time, and then came out. Now they were free. They were eligible to vote, but they found a way to make it so that these people could no longer vote. And not just prisoners, because there were some people in Black communities, when they went to the polls, their names weren't on weren't there. And they were like, well, why is my name not there? I registered. They said, well, your name has been, taken off. So there was a lot of purging. And when they actually, and these were like tens of thousands, I mean, like, I think it was 100,000 in one community. I mean, it was enough to know that. And then the Black community came together so much, so effectively. But because of the voting suppression that was so effective, it didn't matter that they found a way to keep these votes out. And actually, when they, even after the suppression and after the purging of these votes, they still, George Bush still didn't have enough votes to win. He was like eking. They were like, my gosh, we still have to get, even with the suppression and everything they did, George Bush still was falling short. And so there was this woman, God, I forget her name. She became the main one to just basically say that he was president. And they went to the Supreme Court in Florida, and the Supreme Court said, no, you have to do another vote, statewide vote count. And they were going to do another statewide count because it was too close. I think it was less than 500 votes. So whenever that happens, you have to do a complete statewide vote. And so the Supreme Court of Florida said, yes, that you have to do it. And just when they said that, just like a day or two or not, then the Republicans on the Republican side ran to this Supreme Court and said, we got to go to the Supreme Court because the Democrats rule the Supreme Court in Florida. So they said, we got to take this to the Supreme Court. And they took it to the Supreme Court with Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah, they're both.
And,
Yeah.
John Roberts. And, of course, when
They weren't on the Supreme Court yet,
they
but
weren't
they
on
were,
the, they were just
they were involved in the, yes.
They weren't, yeah, they were just legal, they were brought in by other states. They didn't even live in Florida. These people were already thought of, this is all in advance. Of course, we know John Roberts was, then put on the Supreme Court after Trump won. But when they took it to the Supreme Court, they knew they got 5 votes out of, they got that one vote. So they,
John Roberts was before then.
I can
yeah.
put a documentary in the chat for you guys to watch. It was super good to know that history.
And the state of Florida cut the vote counting off at an early time. Stop the voting. No more counting. No more counting. And there was thousands of votes to still be counting and made them stop counting.
Yeah, they stopped it. And if they did continue the votes, they know for sure Al Gore would have won.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it's just a shame. So if you guys want me to, I can put in the thing.
Yeah, somebody said, yeah, please share.
It's pretty good.
So this is the line, basically what comes from the study of the revolutions. The revolutions gave us Midway, and the revolutions also gave us November 9, 2019. The revolutions also gave us November 9. And those would be marked by looking at the study of the revolutions. the rise of Napoleon, the death of Robespierre. I don't think he was necessarily a dictator, but one of the revolutionaries. The death of Lincoln, the death of the abdication of Kaiser Wilhelm. You have the rise of Hitler and the rise of Lenin, all marking, leading or pointing to through the revolutions to 2019, but in particular, I believe it's this one. And this one was a November 9. I think this one was a November 9. I don't remember if a couple of the others were, but pointing to November 9. So that's how she was able to put together and show us that November 9, 2019 would be the shut door on the line of the priests. But you also see dictators here from the revolutions as well. So you've got from the revolutions, you've got Midway, you've got November 9, and also dictator. So you have either the rise or fall, abdication, death, or rise. What it depicted was that you had Donald Trump on this side and Donald Trump on this side. The death of one stage of that dictator and the establishing of a stronger dictator. I don't know if anybody remembers 2019 was, I don't remember what it's called, but when Trump, it was his second, I think it was his first impeachment, I believe. What is it called when the Senate didn't, I don't remember the process and I can't remember how to say it, but the Senate didn't approve it, however that's said. Maybe somebody remembers how to say that because I don't remember, but it was impeached by the House, and it goes to the Senate, and they did not follow it through. Somebody can help me with what it's called because I can't remember. So I believe that's where she was marking Donald Trump being less restrained at that impeachment. Okay, so this particular line here now is going to have a little bit of, it's going to have ipsis on it, where we're going to look at too, briefly. So you have 20, I know I wanted to go back here and make a point because we're looking at the king of the north, the king of the south, and we're looking at the east wind. If anybody remembers, I don't want to go back through this too much, but Uriah Smith, when that whole history of August 11th, 1840 showed also the involvement of the Ottoman Empire or east wind. So you had a king of the north, you had a king of the south. This is from Daniel 11:40. And then the east wind, if anybody remembers those studies, that's for another study. But what you do have in going through this history, Acts 27 tells us the south wind blows, and then what follows? 1524, the peasant war that was inspired by the Reformation. Thank you. Thank you for that. And it might have went to 2019. Did you calculate from 2014 or 2019? The 490 might have been to 2019, I think. That's probably why there's only
No,
two.
it's 2014.
It is 2014? Okay.
Yes.
So, so you have the south wind that blows, and what happens after the south wind? What follows? Acts 27.
The east wind.
The east wind. So you have the south wind that blows, and then you have the east wind. What do we know? How do we ask this question? 9/11 is a harbinger for what? This depends on what is Elder Parmenter taught, that 9/11 is a harbinger for what? I know that's an easy one. I know people remember that. Come on. What is 9/11 a harbinger of? What's it pointing to? Close of probation. Thank you. Close of probation. I'm asking specifically according to what Elder Parmenter has taught for now. Just looking at what was said, what we know was put in place prior to the current camp meeting. So, hey, stop that. Okay, so 911.2 is a harbinger for the close of probation. So you have this issue with the king of the north and the king of the south. The king of the south receives a deadly wound and then a death. And then you see followed by the east wind, right? And we kind of walked through that here with bin Laden. So you have the south wind that is falling, the king of the south going down, and then you have the east wind that follows. Okay. Because when we take this history here, you have the king of the south as well. This is representing the United States, but in this same history, you also have the king of the south that is falling and going to receive, there's a deadly wound, and then there's a death. So Panium to Sunday Law, you see the deadly wound, because we looked at the resurrection. We saw through Putin the resurrection of the king of the south. We see the resurrection from looking at 1798, where you have the deadly wound and the death of the papacy. So if the papacy receives the deadly wound and a death, Elder Test taught us, compare and contrast, then that means in Daniel 11 verse 40 that you would have the king of the south receive a deadly wound and a death. The papacy resurrected, the king of the south resurrects. So you have a deadly wound and a death, a resurrection, king of the south, and then you have this history, a deadly wound and a death. This is Putin. So marking from Panium to Sunday Law, that period for the king of the south receiving the deadly wound and the death. So I think that we're not going to tonight, but we could consider all the different things that have happened with the king of the south during this history. What does the deadly wound to death look like for the king of the south? Sheba.
You mean losing the sphere of influence?
Yes. Okay, so you see the king of the south or Russia losing its spheres of influence. We won't look at that in detail right now, but it's losing its spheres of influence. And I don't know, I don't have the answers to this here, but we know that the king of the south dies at Sunday Law, point period, however that looks, but there is going to be an event. Who is it that places events on a line? Prophetically, how do we understand that?
Angels? First, second, and third? First, second, and third angels?
Yeah, there would be the definer of doctrine, which is who?
In our case, Elder Tess.
So the definer of doctrine would, so I keep that in mind when because we don't.
So I just want to comment there, that the right in the middle, you have 2016.
Yes.
What's the date of that Elder Test uses? 2016 for the change of, the Trump.
The
when
election.
this become, yeah.
The
What's the date that she uses?
To the best of my understanding, the election. I don't remember the date there.
It's November 9th.
Huh?
November 9th.
It's
right?
November 9th. Thank you. Was it? Okay. I think the election was the 8th, and then it was the 9th when they. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have 2019 is our closer probation for the priest.
Yes.
And when you see Elder Tess going through the revolution in 2019 in Brazil, I think study number 4, she places also the close approbation for the Sunday law of the priest, which is November 9th, 2019, on that.
Here,
Going on the Sunday law, on top of the Sunday law.
you're talking about here?
Yes, yeah. She
She
puts
marked
his,
November 9 there.
yeah, November 9th, 2019.
Maybe put that in the chat, then we can each on our own review that, because I don't remember it and I'd love to review it because I don't remember.
Yeah,
her giving a
because
date.
she puts that as changing of 6th to the 7th kingdom there, you know.
Yeah.
So it's
was
something
her-
that Elder Tess, you know, does a couple of times through her studies of the revolution there. Yeah.
When she did it, was she marking it as a symbol or as an actual date?
Well, you know, she was just suggesting that, you know, that would be the closer probation of the priest. That's the change of the kingdom of the 6th to the 7th kingdom there. Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind, put that one in the chat so that we can
Okay.
review
All right.
on our own, because I wouldn't mind reviewing it because I don't remember her doing that. And in my mind, I can understand it maybe being used as a symbol, but not necessarily as an actual date. But I'd love to review what she said. Because when we were talking, maybe on Sabbath, whenever we talked about it, we talked about when I don't know exactly when she understood this date, November 9, but how much evidence she laid in place before she ever said November 9 and put that on the board for us, November 9, 2019. And then on another line, if you're looking at Panium as the formalization, which it is on the line of the big line of 144,000, it's the formalization. What do you always get at the formalization? And on the line of Acts 27, what's at, speaking of which, I'm going to clear that up real quick. On the line of Acts 27, I wrote it wrong when I wrote it last week. And I know I said that this wasn't right, and yet that's what I was thinking she had on the board, but it was over here. So this is the formalization. I just wanted to clear that up because I did have it written here, but I knew it was here. And so I went back and reviewed the video, and this is where she had it written, which is correct. So Panium is the formalization on our big line. That's not what this is right here. It's not the line of the 144,000, but where you do have Rafi and Panium between 9/11 and Sunday law on the line of the 144,000. Panium's the formalization, and what do you get at the formalization? Time. Somebody put it in there. I don't see who did that. So you do get time at the formalization. Sorry, lost my chat. Thank you for putting that in there, Gloria. Okay, so yeah, you do get time at the formalization. So give me just 1 second. I'm going to open that so I don't lose it. Okay, I wanted to have that video open so I don't lose it. Okay, so let me think about where we're at. So you have the south wind blows from Acts 27. So you have south wind to the east wind that blows. So if you have this death and resurrection, deadly wound, death, and then a resurrection of the king of the south, then you're going to have, stop that. And then, so you have a resurrection, but now going back to the king of the north, the papacy, there was a death, a deadly wound, a death, and a resurrection, and then it would come, that resurrection would lead to its final death. So if the king of the south has a deadly wound, a death, and a resurrection, then this resurrection leads to this period, this repeating of this history up here where it is where the king of the south finally dies. And then you have the one world order. So the United States was trying to do this back in this history. The United States is trying to set up this new world order, and what gets in the way? What happens? What stops the United States from its one world order?
Is it 9/11 Islam?
East wind. Yeah. Yes. 9/11. East wind. It comes in and it stops the United States from achieving its new world order. So the east wind is it's a restraint on this new world order. You have at this history Donald Trump. You could have had, these are her words, so we know there's a lot that had to happen, but her words are, you could have had the seventh kingdom here. Donald Trump was here. Donald Trump was at 2000. You could have had, she says, that transition from sixth to seventh kingdom. 9/11 comes in and stops it, restrains it, and then you have this rest of this history. So there's a lot of other histories that we can look at, but I think we're already trying to explode on too much all at once. I hope everybody's following okay. Are you keeping up with the whole concepts of the east wind, the king of the north and the king of the south, the deaths, the resurrections? Are you keeping, is there anybody need me to repeat anything? I'll assume that means that you're all okay with understanding it. Okay. So we know that in the history prior to 1989, it's bilateral world. You go into this history with the UN, you have multilateral, and then you come to Sunday law, and it will be unilateral, the completion or formation of that one world order. So looking at the history of Donald Trump, I'm looking at Ipsos now. So Ipsos gives us, there were two stories, and I'm not going to remember both of them that she gave us for Ipsos, but I am going to remember the Battle of Ipsos, where you have Ptolemy, Seleucus, and Cassander representing what? Anybody remember? In this history, what did they represent? They were the three allies. What do they represent in the United States?
For our government, the threefold electric,
Yeah.
not electric.
Yeah. Three branches.
Executive, yeah, the three branches. Thank you.
Three branches. So you have Antigonus. She goes into the story of Ipsos with Antigonus, who was born with two eyes, and in one battle, one eye is put out, and that battle is marked at the Battle of Ipsos, where one eye is put out, marking the breaking of the first horn. So you have the election between Clinton and Trump here. And she calls Trump the face of the Sunday law. It's a female, Clinton, running for president, who stands for human rights, LGBTQ rights, all of it. So in 2016, marking the Battle of Ipsos, where you have Antigonus, who represents the one that is like the ancestor, I think is what it's called, representing Alexander, and Alexander being the establishment. So Clinton representing the establishment. And then you have Demetrius. I hope I remember all these details. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, if you're fresh on these memory. You have Demetrius, who's then supported by who? So Demetrius is Trump. Clinton is Antigonus, the establishment. And Demetrius is Trump. And then Pyrrhus is the one that helps Demetrius. So you have the king of the south helping Trump. Okay. So they're allied. When you take that from World War II, treaty. Which treaty was it? Somebody can remember. I'll be right back. I need to put the dog out. Hang on 1 second. Sorry, just not feeling very good. What's going on? Okay, so Pyrrhus is supporting Demetrius, and Putin is supporting Trump in this battle. We know that it was a information war. Pyrrhus gives the story of Pyrrhus gives us the information war. Is that right? Pyrrhus gives us information war? Deal with the elephants?
Yes.
Okay, so Pyrrhus gives us the information war. And so the Battle of Ipsus is this battle where you have, it's Antigonus fighting Demetrius, or Clinton fighting. They're not fighting each other. What are they fighting for? Using the parable. What are they trying to accomplish? What do they want control of? The executive, yeah. So with the three allies though, being Cassander, Seleucus, and I said them all three a minute ago. Not Ptolemy, because Ptolemy wasn't there. The three allies, they're fighting for the three branches of government, and they're fighting in particular there. They win I think they're fighting for the three branches, and they win the executive branch there. The elder test marks Trump. This is the dictators. Marks Trump as a dictator here, 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 and here. And I just want us to note, because it's a discussion I'm having with somebody else trying to sort out, was Trump president here?
No, he wasn't, but he would not refuse. He refused to accept the results, so he was still working behind the scenes there.
And he also, yes, he was, and he also. These are just some of the thoughts that I've had in the discussion outside of this study. He was gaining more and more power over the Republican Party, right? And there are times here and there. I'm sorry, I don't have any of them pulled up for this study, but there are things that he used his influence, if you want to say it that way, to control decisions made within the Republican Party. I see him, if it's safe to say, well, I don't know if I want to say that on recording, but we see him as a dictator. He's always been the president for the Republicans, which is half the country. Yeah. So even though he wasn't president, she marks him as a dictator, and at each step, he's less and less restrained until you come here, where we know you had to have the executive branch. Elder Parmenter taught that, had to have the executive branch. So at Sunday Law, it now has the trifecta, right? So he has all three branches: executive, legislative, and judicial.
Actually, if I may make a comment,
Sure.
I believe that during, the times that he wasn't president, which was, during Biden's administration, he did, he was still very influential with the Republican Party. But I saw the Republicans sort of waning. They started to wane. And you got more Republicans that started to see, well, you know what? It's just not, we don't like that. But what he did gain in support, which I think he had in 2016 too, but he had developed more of a following was in the white working class people in America. That's where I think he won that in 2016. They were still with him, but he actually gained more of them this time. Not a lot more, but because there was no slam dunk like everybody's saying, but he did gain a lot of support doing the white. So now that he's coming back, there are some Republicans that, did go against him in a sense.
Well, the question.
Yeah.
What happens when you go against him?
Well, you're gonna
What are his words? What's he going to do to those that go against him?
retribution.
Retribution.
Yes.
Retribution. And
Yep.
that's a I don't know if you want to keep going. I don't know if you were finished or not. I just want to add that
That's
question.
good. That's good.
Okay. So he continued to build and his ability to get control over people without, I don't want to say without doing anything, he does. He's going to get retribution. Okay, so he says he's going to get retribution. Back here, some of those people might not have believed it. Right?
Right.
I
still think
I
today.
didn't read the article, but I saw the headline and somebody else was talking about it. MSNBC, Scarborough, is that his name?
Yeah. Mika and Joe.
Did anybody see them in the news? What they did?
Yes, they
They
did.
went to visit Trump in
Why?
Florida.
Because they're afraid that because he even said that he was going to seek retribution from a few people that he thought was his friend. So, and everybody thinks, well, of course they believe that he will, because they know him actually, because Joe was good friends with him. But people even today don't believe that he's really going to seek retribution.
Surprise.
But he really
Yeah.
is.
I
And
think
so
that's going to change. I think that's going to change because one of the things that he says he's going to do, what is he going to do with all the civil servants? Is that what they're called? Civil?
he's going to replace them with
He's
his.
gonna- Yeah,
Well, if
Get
you're
rid
one
of
of those, how many? I believe it's a very large number. You're talking about many different institutions. Is that the right way to describe it? Branches. I don't know what you call it. You got a family, and you're one of those jobs.
Yeah.
What are you tempted to do?
Oh, yeah, you're right. In fact, what they said was I heard that what they were going to do is they were going to talk to these, before they just fire people, they're going to talk to them. They're going to find out where their allegiance is. And, I'm sure a lot of people are just going to give in, they're going to whatever. A lot of people are going to do that.
That's what I think too. And when it comes to the Sunday law and how you vote, yes, people that voted for Trump, you got this representation of the mark of the beast. But there's also those people that didn't vote for Trump, but may want to keep their jobs, for those ones in particular as an example. So take that thought with where he has come from 2016 to where he is here, and you see those two from MSNBC capitulating, right? They want to save their Sims. I'll put it nicely. They want to save their jobs, and when you look at the civil servants, I would think there's going to be those that want to save their jobs.
And the sad thing about it is Mika is she's really for women's rights, and how she just easily gave up so quickly.
Here we are, Trump.
So when you go to this history beyond, what did Elder Parmenter say was the most important thing to happen after the election? What did he note? The most important thing. Buckling under fear, yeah. What did Elder Perminder point out to be what he believed was the most important thing, most significant thing that happened since the election? Trump talks to Putin. What did he tell Putin? Not to escalate.
Not to escalate. Yep.
It is kind of interesting that he did escalate.
He did escalate. Yes, he
So, I
did.
mean, that's something I don't have completely figured out, but he did escalate.
Well,
I have thoughts on that.
I have a thought on that too, because Timothy
Snyder.
Snyder said in one of his podcasts that in 19, I guess I don't know I can't remember the year, but late 90s, early 2000s, I think. It was when Donald Trump was going through his bankruptcy. I think it was 98 to like 2004. He couldn't get he had like 6 bankruptcies, right?
Yep.
And he couldn't get, like, he was in deep trouble and he couldn't get anybody to fund it. No bank would touch him. So he couldn't get like money and finances because that's how he lives his life. He borrows money from here to do this over here. He doesn't, and he couldn't do that. Nobody would touch him. No bank in America would touch him. But there was one people that would, and it was Russian mafia, which is under control of who? Putin. They gave him money, lots of money. He has a debt to pay with them. So this is something, the people don't know, but yes, he has a debt to pay to, it's his life and his whole family's life. He owes Putin.
So you have, keep that thought holding there. The Battle of Ipsus shows Trump as the winner. I'm trying to remember how you say this, King of the North, King of the South, but you have the establishment versus this new, I'm going to say, it would be the Paleos if you go back to the Vesper studies, but you have Trump defeating Clinton, marking the Battle of Ipsus, and he wins the executive branch, and he goes on to, and we know that the beginning of the battle for the judicial branch began back here in 2014, if anybody remembers that, with the purging of the moderates, the withholding or restraining, Mitch McConnell restraining Obama from appointing judges. It opens the way for Trump to appoint Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett. Who's the third one? Gorsuch, right? First was Gorsuch. So he places 3 Supreme Court justices. And now the SCOTUS has a conservative majority. He's impeached here. The Senate doesn't. I don't remember what you call it. It's not an arrest. I don't remember what it calls it, but he would have been booted out. And I don't remember what you call it, but they don't go along with it. And then 2021 marks the insurrection, right? January 6th insurrection. Panium also marks war. I marked it up here for World War I and World War II. This Battle of Ipsus, this battle is an internal battle with the United States, so it's war on the Western Front. Panium marks this war, this history here, with the downfall of the King of the South. So as you've got this war on the King of the South here, and I don't remember the details. Heraclea, I want to say was 2018, but that would be another thing to put in our list here. Those battles from Pyrrhus that mark that. But you see this war now on the Eastern Front, this war with the King of the South. So eventually culminating in what we saw was the election. Trump is voted in as president, not just the electoral college, but the popular vote, and quite a large popular vote. Harris, as Elder Parmenter pointed out, and I don't know, because I didn't realize people some people didn't know this, maybe we all did. I knew that he was, or that Harris, Kamala Harris, back in 2019 when she was running for the nomination, why wasn't she chosen? Why wasn't she selected to be the nominee? Anybody remember? She was way too progressive for the Democratic Party. They would not put her there because she was her, what do you call it? Not ideology, her policies would have been way far too progressive for the Democrat Party. So when you come to this election here, what does Biden do? Biden's not doing good. I don't mean the election. Biden's health is not doing good. They cover up his health. It's after the primaries, and you're just about at the DNC, and they got to nominate somebody. So they bring in Harris, woman of color, mixed races, and put her in there. The Democrats, though many may have hated Trump, when put to the test to choose somebody so far progressive, somebody that is not going to work as Biden did with his hand stretched out across the aisle, which even at that, he didn't fulfill well either. So Harris couldn't win. The people chose Trump over Kamala Harris. She was too far left. So
Elaine,
yeah,
as Elder Parmenter said, though, that she didn't concentrate on the things that were most important to the people that Trump got, which was the economy and immigration.
exactly.
Right. She was more for women's rights, LGBT
Yes.
rights, and for the rest of the world, that's just way out there.
Yeah, especially when they're looking to, where's my next meal coming from? I need to have some help here with my financial situation. What are you going to do for me?
Right. So while women's rights and gender rights, we understand what the relevance of that is.
Right.
People need to eat today, and you're always going to choose today.
Yeah.
I look back at the whole credit card system. Credit cards were put in. What was the purpose of that? So people can have today what they can't afford. And this whole mindset of looking just right in front of us instead of the long range. But so she wasn't looking at the economy, and she wasn't looking at immigration as it needed to be addressed.
She was looking at the economy, but she wasn't looking. She was looking at the middle class. She wasn't looking at. She was looking at those who made 55,000 and above. But what Donald Trump focused on with those who were making 55 lower, like 40, 30 and 40,000, these people that feel, and his message was, they were the ones, his message was appealing to them because they do feel like they've been left out. They do feel like nobody cares about them. Everybody cares about, people going to college and, people, they're looking at the United States and going, gosh, all these Democrats are, they've got college degrees, they've got good jobs, and we got nothing. They're still, can you believe that today the federal minimum wage is $7.25. There are states, mostly red, in this country that some people get paid $7.25. If they work 5 days a week at 8 hours a day, 40 hours and all month, They make $1,100 a month. Can we even imagine that? So these people who have been forgotten about, mainly the red states in the Bible Belt, or these places where people just don't care about them, those are the ones that came out and voted for Trump. Trump knew that too. So whenever he went to these places, he was always saying these things. But what what you're also looking at is these people, this demographic, they don't watch the news. They don't keep themselves up to date with what's going on. They don't take the time to inform themselves of what's going on, whatever their situations are. They listen to podcasts, and that's how they get their influence.
Yep. And
And
he
so
went to Joe Rogan, and that's
they
how
did, and
that spread all over
and
on
the,
that podcast alone.
and these podcasts, remember, like, I guess it was Yarvin. Remember Yarvin? Was it Chris Yarvin? I forget anyway. These people that are very, very right wing, they were funded by billionaires. Like Peter Thiel funded Yarvis. You know what? I forgot his first name. Anyway, he was on MSNBC anyway. He was one of the guys that JD Vance just absolutely loves, where he became a big, these wealthy billionaires are funding these little podcast people because they have the right message. And in order to give them strength and to give them more, I mean, when you really think about it, it was genius. I just have to say, not that I'm for them. I'm just saying what they did was genius, because they literally, I mean, I just don't know why the Democrats didn't see this coming, because I have an article that I can share with you guys. I'll put it in the chat. And this article was written in May of 2023. And it was from the Australian Institute of International Affairs by a professor named Paul Kinney. And he is an expert in political economy and populism. He wrote a few books and stuff, but he was watching this whole thing, and he wrote a whole big thing, and he saw what was going on. He analyzed the 2016 election, and then he looked at the 2020 midterms. And by just looking at those two and the way the votes came out there, he knew that if the Democrats didn't change their thing, that Donald Trump would be elected in 2024. I mean, and I have to say that we have to be very careful about what's going to happen with the media, because the day after Donald Trump won, the Washington Post replaced their main editor or person that's in charge, and it's with a conservative person, and a kind of right-wing conservative. And so the Washington Post is already caving in because of the new administration. Things are going to change, and it's censorship, and they're already preparing, because they know that they won't be able to survive if they don't, bow down to Donald Trump. So we won't be able. You won't, in America. It's going to be difficult to get to try to get the good news. You'll have to go out to like Australia or Europe, or these medias that Donald Trump can't control. They'll be the ones that will, you find the good ones. There's the program right now. It's called Ground News, and I subscribe to them. They help kind of sift through some of this stuff that's becoming harder and harder to sift through. And so,
now, what's so sad about it? Donald Trump doesn't have one nickel, let alone a dime, to give to these poor people that are brainwashed by his gibby gab. He does have some concepts, but we haven't heard them. He has nothing to give them, and he will not give them nothing.
Yeah, but they don't know. But some people are finding out now, and they can't believe that they're really scared.
So Troy put in there, counter-revolution had to fail. Yeah, prophecy dictated the counter-revolution had to fail. I want to make one last point, and we got to close. Going back to something that Donna brought up when we came to retribution and people capitulating. Now take that global. How does that look? You have all these different nations in the world. They've witnessed Donald Trump's rise in power. How are they going to respond? How are these different nations going to respond? How have they responded thus far? I know I've read some articles that said that many nation leaders have already called him. They'll fall in line. Some will fall in line out of fear. Some will fall in line because they're with them. Some will fall in line, out of fear. That there'll be those that capitulate, and those that don't will be forced to fall in line because they already see how he's doing it. And it is like, you brought up Putin and mafia. We'll leave it at that, Putin and mafia. So how does the mafia get people? They kind of get to the place where they don't really have to say much. But you still fear.
Right.
So there'll be fear because we know that this is all based on fear. The Republican Party worked based on fear to get to the point of where we are today.
Right.
So if it's helpful, I'll try to do a real brief summary of what we touched. I don't know if I can do that because it's a whole lot of information, but we're looking at the death of the King of the South with the resurrection of the King of the South and comparing that with the 2021 history, Panium to Sunday Law, where you saw, because there was a resurrection back here in 1999, 2000, he's prime minister, in 2000, he's president. So you see him rising back up. You see the King of the South resurrected. So you come to its final death here in Panium to Sunday Law, where he receives a deadly wound. He's losing his spheres of influence. And I don't know what marks the death, or if the death is that loss of sphere of influence. If you go back to that number 7 study in France, 2019, School of the Prophets, you'll hear her talk about the United Nations and all the different nations and who is a proxy of the United States or allied with the United States, and who's an ally with Russia, and one by run and through the war in Israel, what's going on in Ukraine, and all these different battles that have taken place. Putin has lost his spheres of influence, and so I don't know how to fit in with Trump calls Putin very significant, tells him not to escalate. Biden, the lame duck president, figures he'll take one last stand to give this push to Ukraine. And now they're threatening that what Biden did is going to set off World War III. We already know we're already in World War III. But that's what they're saying. So Putin then turns around and does continue and I don't remember what the battle was, but he did a lot of stuff in Ukraine just the day after that, taking out several strategic areas. So Putin doesn't listen to him. Somewhere in there would have to be, because you got a deadly wound, he's losing his spheres of influence, and then there's a death. So, but when there is that death, you also have the United States. You have the one world order that they set out to do in 9/11. They set out to have their one world order. Back here where George Bush Sr. announces it, not 9/11, but in September 11, 1990. You see the south wind, favorable winds, and then when the south wind stops, you have the rising up of the east wind, which was Euroclid in Acts 27. So the east wind restrains or stops the work. The King of the South is rising back up. The United States is fighting a war on terror. So it's distracted from its work of this new world order. You come into this history and you have the rising up of Trump. Trump can be traced all the way back to 1989, but you see Trump at each one of these waymarks marked by Elder Tess, each one of these waymarks as a dictator. He wins the Battle of Ipsus against Hillary Clinton here, gaining the executive branch. We see that he gains the power over the judicial branch in here and placing 3 conservative judges, gets Roe v. Wade overturned in here, I believe. Is that here? No. Yeah, it eventually results in the overturning of Roe v. Wade, what he did in the Supreme Court. And now he has the trifecta of the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch are all far-right conservative run, Republican run, and conservative run. We know that he says that when it comes to the deportation, I watched a documentary that talked about how there's only 6,000 ICE agents. There's no way that they're going to be rounding up all those people, but he has made clear that he is going to declare martial law in order to get the military involved for the deportation. So you have that going on. Then you have the economy issue. The economy issue, even though he spoke to the needs of the poor, the lower class, his economic plans, from everything that I'm reading, if correct, I'm not good in that area, but his economic plans seem to suggest that it's going to be very bad for the economy. You have Elon Musk as his one to come in and help get it all in line. We know what he did with Twitter. So I don't expect it to be very easy financially here as well.
Oh, it's going to be very, very difficult for everybody.
Like I said, a disaster.
So we looked at the midway. Go ahead. Somebody else was going to say something too.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that because he said it's going to be a hardship on people. Yeah, I've heard him say that.
Yeah.
And he's going to deregulate the banks. He's going to deregulate Bitcoin. He's the Bitcoin king. And he's also said he's making Bitcoin, the United States is going to be the king of Bitcoin throughout the world. I see this moving more digital under Trump.
I see his policies. I've read articles that the bankers are loving his policies.
Oh, dancing in the streets.
Yeah, so we can see the midway points come from the revolutions, going back to French Revolution, Civil War, marking the midpoints there, that each of those took us through 220, the line of representing restoration, and the 151 coming from as a symbol of the 2520, all took you to 2014, which was the midway point between 9/11 and 2019. We took that April 19, July 21 closed probation from Millerite history here. And you see at 2019, the revolutions took us to this, to see the lines of dictators, as well as you have the death of a dictator and the rise of a dictator. In some places, sometimes it was the death and the rise, and Trump represents the death and the rise. I might have said that wrong, but Trump represents the death of a dictator and the rise of a more powerful dictator. Same person though, just like you have here where it's the United States. It's still the United States. When you go from the 6th head to the 7th head, it's still the United States. So here you have it is Trump on this side, Trump on this side. Same thing down here. It's Trump on both sides of 2019. He just continues all the way through. But when you come to Sunday law, you've gone through from Panem to Sunday law, the death, the overturning, and the overturning of the 6th kingdom, the transition, that's the word I'm looking for, transition from the 6th kingdom to the 7th kingdom, but it is the USA here, and it is the USA here in both places. So just like in 2019, it's Trump on both sides. He just gains more power until you finally come to this history here. So I hope that was helpful. It was kind of a broad view of many of the studies that Elder Tess did, part of the Midnight Cry. Is there any questions? I hope everybody was able to follow it. Well, I do appreciate everybody's help. And because together we can remember things as a group, as opposed to one person trying to remember it all. So I would highly encourage some of these reviews, and that others review and be set yourselves to a place of being ready to teach something. I've said this numerous times. Teaching helps it stick. So review, draw the lines, do the transcripts, whatever works for you, and then teach it. And it will help it to stick. Because I mean, we understand that this was preparation. And I know that from listening to Elder Parmenter, doesn't sound like we're very prepared. And I'll just remind us, just put that reminder out there that teaching really helps. So let's go ahead and close in prayer. Almighty God in heaven, we thank you, Lord, for the midnight cry. We thank you for the leaders that you have given us and for the messages that they've brought us. We thank you for the time that we've had, the time of preparation, to try to better understand all the different histories and all the different lines that all point to the dispensation that we are now walking through. We ask you to continue, and we claim, according to your promise, that you'll never leave us nor forsake us, and to help us along this journey, that you that began this great work in us will complete it. Help us to always be mindful, Lord, that we know that it's in this history that the many are overthrown. And I pray for all of us, we would set our hearts to whatever is necessary to understand, whatever is necessary to let go of, that we would be standing on the firm platform, so that when the rain comes and the flood comes and the winds blow, that we would remain standing, faithful, not capitulating, as we're going to see a lot of people do. I pray that that not be among us. We cannot do this without you. We thank you for the journey that you have brought us on, for calling us and giving us this opportunity and blessing to be a part of it. And I pray that we continue on this journey with our hearts set on victory, to hear the words, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant," that we would be in the heavenly kingdom. We thank you for loving us. Please continue to be merciful to us, Lord. And we pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.